Hello and welcome to another SINC Executive Insights. My name is Jason Senamore. I am the VP of Product Strategy here at SINC, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Isaac Sacolick, the CEO and founder of valued SINC partner StarCIO. Isaac has been heavily involved in SINC's activities throughout this year, acting as Master of Ceremonies for a number of our regional forums, as well as leading moderation duties at our intimate dinners we've been running across the country, participating in our industry research, moderating webinar discussions, as well as doing his day job in consulting a number of organizations on their digital transformation strategy. The idea of today's discussion is to have a very candid conversation with you, Isaac, and get a good feel for what's been going on with you and the industry in 2019, some of the activities you've been involved in, some of the trends you've seen developing, and more importantly, what your fellow technology industry evangelists and executives and leaders should expect as we round the corner into 2020. Isaac, thank you very much for joining me today.
Jason, it's great to be here, and it's great to be a SINC partner and involved in all your events and your writing that you're putting out, your research that you're putting out, as well as just networking with everybody who attends the events and helping event sponsors meet people and get their message out. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Definitely, and let's just jump right in. As I mentioned, you've been heavily involved in a lot of what we've been doing this year. With that comes a great amount of exposure to what CIOs, CISOs across public, private sector, large enterprise, mid-market organizations, what's been keeping them up at night, what their focuses have been, and where their priorities lie. So I'd love to start by just asking you very candidly, how's 2019 been for you? I mean, what are the kind of key focus areas that you've seen a lot of the individuals within this space looking at and working on right now?
Yeah, so Jason, I think 2019 is going to go down as one of the pivotal years for CIOs. If you look back, maybe a couple of years ago, we were still seeing CIOs ask questions about their role in transformation, how to deal with legacy and infrastructure were top of mind. When you look at this year, I think it's been a little bit of a change to not whether they are leading transformation, but how do they run culture changes, and how do they partner with their colleagues, and how do they continue to get budget for things that they need to invest in. So I think it's more about how and who and how they're prioritizing and what their strategies are. Interesting enough, I ran a survey that I published just a couple of weeks ago, and I asked mostly CIOs a question. So I had published an article about practices that I think were on their way out, things like bimodal IT that were supposed to help organizations split between a mode 1 and a mode 2, or a fast mode and a slow mode between development and support. I also wondered how leaders were thinking about Agile, and whether Agile was just a technology practice, or were they going beyond technology and really partnering with the business and figuring out how to get off of a waterfall mentality and into a real Agile culture and mindset. And then I asked about some technologies, whether microservices was replacing our mindset of mobile first, which was probably where we were 5 to 10 years ago, and where low-code played in, and where things like DevOps played. And it was sort of it really read as a pivotal year. I saw a lot of people acknowledging that IT practices, collaboration with the business, how we're thinking about data and customer experience has certainly taken us past some of the practices that we were doing in the past. So no more bimodal, we're DevOps, and no more waterfall, we're now Agile cultures, and no more just mobile, we're really microservices and API driven. And not just data, but we need to have proactive data governance and analytics. So a lot of the things that we need to change about what we're doing is up top of mind. But when I asked people where their maturity was in terms of Agile practices, do they think they were experts? Do they think they were really maturing in DevOps or just getting started? And what I found is that for the majority of the respondents, they acknowledged to me that they were just either getting started or making some improvements, but didn't really consider themselves experts or drivers yet. And so, like I said, I think this is going to be a pivotal year, 2019 and 20. I think, where the economy leads us in 2020 will be a factor. We are also seeing a lot of things that suggest that businesses have to move faster. A lot of retail disrupted this year, some financial services disruption this year. So I think more industries, more sizes of companies, and therefore more CIOs are trying to figure out how to get their organizations to do more around applications, around data, around cloud, and really partner with the business in terms of being able to make an impact.
Definitely, yeah, that's amazing. And you've obviously mentioned there a couple of industries being heavily disrupted, the use of data and how that plays into that disruption. Obviously, fully aware of your knowledge and expertise around things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. How's that conversation around that area of technology evolved this year? Do you see a few more people kind of being a little bit open to the experimentation, or a few more kind of winning business cases starting to surface?
Well, I see a couple things happen. I talked about AI quite a bit last year. It was, what use cases should I look into, and what is really deep learning, and where does AI and RPA begin and end? A lot of questions about the what, and less about the how. This year, the last keynote I gave in Southwest and Northwest was really about non-technology companies that don't have all the talent and data and analytics and machine learning, and how they're thinking about getting themselves ready for more machine learning experiments. And so, getting into the 5 to 10% of companies that are currently investing in machine learning, but probably don't have production use cases yet, and how to start getting that ramped up. So a lot of discussion around natural language processing, around recommendation engines, things that have been really matured and evolved over the last 10 years, and how to put them in practice. In certain industries like oil and gas, I think the leapfrog from where they are today to one that leverages both IoT and AI, and looking at that as a single experiment, right? How do we get more intelligent and more real time about analytics coming from the field, and be able to, not go through a heavy, exhaustive analytics function, but use machine learning to find patterns and report back in real time. So those types of use cases coming about, even in education and in higher ed, how to really impact the user experience and be smart about, what students are looking for and what even educators are looking for, and what do you put in your mobile applications to be able to do that. So what types of courses should you be considering taking as a sophomore when you've done well in math, but maybe not as well in science? That's an exact conversation I had with a SINC representative. I forget which conference it was. Conversations about what books should I be reading, so I'm really knowledgeable about it. So when the executives are interested in talking about, where does machine learning play in the impact of our organization, which, how do you understand the language at a level deeper and say, I think we should go do X and partner with company Y, is really where CIOs need to be at today.
Great. And I suppose, casting your mind back to this time last year, and when you started thinking about what 2019 had in store for us, is there anything that you thought might gather momentum this year that hasn't quite taken off, which seems to be a little bit more dormant and potentially has the ability to wake up in 2020?
Quite frankly, I thought enterprises would be a little bit further with their DevOps programs. It's not that enterprises aren't investing in the cloud. In fact, research is suggesting they're in multiple clouds, they're in data centers, they're in SaaS. But I think that, I think maybe it's been a pretty hard hurdle just to get into the cloud and to get infrastructure set up and get, the regulation and the security set up for it. But when you look at the number of applications CIOs are building and supporting, and the fact that yes, we're getting more budget, but we're really getting more budget to do experimentation. We're not necessarily getting more budget. And so somewhere in here, we need more standardized environments. We need more ability to automate our deployments. We need to be able to test better so that we can deploy more frequently. And those are still conversations that I think CIOs are still wrapping up their arms around. So I do think DevOps remains a fairly sizable opportunity for CIOs to look at into next year, as well as low code. I talk about low code pretty much in some fashion in my different talks. And if you don't know what low code is, it's essentially, how if you're building and supporting applications, you're probably doing it on platforms like .NET and Java and JavaScript. You have really talented developers and testers and DevOps engineers doing all the coding, all the testing, and all the deployments. And the question is, do you have applications that you cannot build today or you cannot build efficiently today because of all the expense in infrastructure, in coding, and in people to be able to go execute on it? So there are different low-code platforms out there today that accelerate that, enable your ability to experiment. In some cases, they take things that are relatively easy to do today, but just make it more efficient. Things like building mobile applications and integrating enterprise data sources and building new UIs and UXs on top of it. And sometimes it's tied to emerging technologies, the ability to do data streaming and doing machine learning without having to do all the heavy lifting to do the application development and machine learning. So there's still a lot of opportunity and, quite frankly, a lot of noise out there when looking at these different platforms. But I think it's an uncharted area for a good number of CIOs to go look at. And then I think the interesting thing, I'm going to take my bet with you, Jason, that I think CIOs are going to start looking at their ERPs again. It's a subject we haven't talked a lot about in the last 2 or 3 years, primarily because nobody wants to touch it. It's expensive. It's perceived as, a lot of work, a lot of risk with little payoff or little ROI. And there's a couple things that the ERP vendors are doing, whether it's, helping move to the cloud or putting additional analytics or building additional machine learning off of it. And so I look at that as a huge opportunity for CIOs that have a lot of custom code, a lot of ERP in their data center, and saying, maybe it's time to relook at this as a way of getting from a customized on-prem solution to a best-in-breed integrated in the cloud platform, and start doing and managing the ERP a little bit more efficiently. So we'll see, Jason. I think we'll be hearing more about that in 2020.
Yeah, we can figure out what the wager is offline. Okay.
Yep. We'll take our bets on this one, right? So, I can feel the darts and the tomatoes coming at me.
2020 then. Now, obviously, from now all the way through January, we're going to see various individuals, organizations, publications, associations put out their predictions for 2020. I've been spending the last 6 weeks speaking with our executive council members across the country, getting an understanding of the content they'd like to see next year, the areas they feel they require a little bit more education on, and the areas they feel that require some industry case studies as well, and a bit more of a focus on their part. Some really interesting conversations, topics such as, obviously, cybersecurity seems to be top of mind for a lot of people. When we break that down, there seems to be a lot of interest on how to integrate artificial intelligence into your cybersecurity strategy. There's a lot of focus on how data regulation, privacy, and governance laws are going to start evolving across certain state lines. There's also an appetite from our executive council to see some content geared towards new technologies such as blockchain, which is very exciting, 5G, which by all accounts is going to change the industry as we know it. So a lot of noise, right? I'm sure you've been having similar conversations with your friends and colleagues in the industry as well. So put it on record today. So what do you think is going to happen in 2020? Where do you think the industry will shift, and where do you think the majority of focus will be outside of those areas that obviously haven't necessarily been tackled in 2019 as expected?
All right, so let's get from strategic to tactical for a second, okay? I think the strategic area that you mentioned is this intersection between 5G and IoT and AI, because when you put those three technologies together, you're starting to be able to deliver new types of content really fast. You're able to process lots of more data, and now you're connecting, the real world with the digital world at scale. And so I think organizations really need to leave how they're operating today and work with outsiders and work with their partners and redream what their platform looks like, particularly when they put those three technologies together. You think about what the impact of mobile was, right? You have a new screen, you're carrying it around with you, you're starting to feel the impact of a consumer experience now hitting the enterprise when people expect convenience and expect data to go with them. And now you put all those three things, AI, IoT, and 5G together, and I think it's really going to be a game changer. So I think that's the strategy organizations need to think out in 2020. When we get a little bit more from strategy into, what's your game plan? What are you actually looking to implement and roadmap? I think your area around privacy and data governance, what I call proactive data governance, the ability to turn data from really a risk into an asset, and to really democratize it and make it available in your organization, implement data cleansing rules, ubiquitously move data around from different environments. This is an area CIOs either need to have a real game plan for, or they're going to start falling behind because their competitors are able to do it. And there's lots of platforms, there's skills, there's processes, so the technology's there to do this stuff. It's just a matter of figuring out what the priorities are and what assets to really focus on. And then when you get really tactical, I think cybersecurity is a good area to get tactical on. We see it a lot at the SINC events when our sponsors and our partners are coming at us with really powerful security technologies with the ability to look at different patterns with machine learning and proactively tell you there's something that doesn't look right over here. There's something active, or there's potentially an internal breach or some way of even decoying traffic in such a way that it doesn't hit critical assets. So I think that's an area that, looking into 2020 and your budgets, and you're looking at where do you need to get a little bit ahead. You want to get a little bit ahead. Your partners, your vendors are out there are plugging machine learning into their security platforms, and that's a good way to actually plug in, do a POC with some of them, and find out where and what types of approaches are most appropriate to your business. So strategic, planning for execution, and write a checkbook and start getting involved with. How's that?
That's fantastic. No, that's great. Thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate it. Final question before I let you go. I understand you are working on another book. Any plans for any progress with that next year?
I have been working feverishly this last 2 months. Number one, to finish my speaking jobs, which I think they're mostly done for the year. I have a bunch of more writing jobs for my blog, Social, Agile, and Transformation, my writing on CIO and InfoWorld, and then writing for some of my sponsors that I do work for. So I hope by the time I get to the holiday season, I can really get down into the book and start really plugging away at it. For those who have not read my book, it's been 2 years since it's published. It's Driving Digital. It's an Amazon bestseller. I still get feedback on Twitter and LinkedIn very often from people who have discovered it. So if you have not read it, it really is your playbook for how to operationalize digital transformation. And to give you a little bit of insight over what I'm doing next, my next book is really about the next generation of leadership. those who want to get into technology, but then figure out how to take their skills and apply and learn how to be a leader in technology and not just an implementer of technology. This book is a storybook. It's really a collection of stories, some mine, some others, and it really is there to share some lessons. It's a little rough along the edges, so it's going to be a book you can drink a beer to. And I really hope I can get enough mileage done over the next couple months to send it off to my editor. So thanks for asking, Jason.
Amazing. We very much look forward to it. Driving Digital, certainly a fantastic book. Always has a lot of interest at our forums when we make it available to the attendees there, as you know. Isaac Sacolick, thank you very much. A wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge as always. I encourage you guys to check out StarCIO and the work Isaac is doing there. Absolutely fantastic, extremely valued partner of SINC. Thank you very, very much for your insight today, and looking forward to a fantastic 2020 with you.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Ross, and everybody at SINC. So long to my friends at all the attendees and sponsors at SINC, and happy holidays and have a great new year, 2020.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. Take care.